In the remote wilderness of Yukon, far from the nearest town, William and Margaret lived in a rustic wooden cabin surrounded by towering evergreens and deep snowdrifts. They had chosen this life of solitude over the noise and distractions of city living, embracing nature and its challenges for over 3 decades. Each morning, they woke before dawn, lighting a fire to fend off the bitter cold, and took long walks through the frozen forest, marveling at the wildlife that thrived in the harsh environment. One such morning, they encountered a pair of wild foxes, a cautious but curious duo, a sleek male with a reddish coat and a smaller female with deep amber eyes. William named the male Rust, while Margaret affectionately called the female Ember. At first, the foxes kept their distance, watching warily from the edge of the trees. But over time, with patience and kindness, William and Margaret earned their trust. They began leaving scraps of dried fish and fresh meat on the porch, and soon, the foxes came to see the cabin as a familiar, safe place. The bond between the couple and the foxes grew quietly but deeply, a testament to the mutual understanding that can exist between humans and wild creatures. However, the unforgiving Yukon wilderness was not without its dangers, and one fateful evening, the fragile peace they had built was shattered. A violent blizzard had begun to brew, thick snow swirling through the air as fierce winds howled through the trees. William, needing to stock up on essential supplies before the storm worsened, decided to make the arduous trip into town, leaving Margaret alone in the cabin. As the snow piled up and the wind howled against the wooden walls, Margaret busied herself by tending to the fire and boiling water for tea. Then came the sound, an urgent scratching at the door. At first, she thought it was just a branch scraping against the wood, but the noise persisted, growing more frantic. Her heart pounded as she moved toward the door. When she finally unlatched it, the freezing wind rushed inside, and there, standing in the snow, was Rust. His fiery coat was dusted with white, and his golden eyes were wide with distress. He had never approached the door before, never shown such urgency. Something was terribly wrong. Trusting his instincts, Margaret quickly threw on her thick coat and grabbed a lantern before following Rust into the storm. The cold cut through her layers as she trudged through the knee-deep snow, struggling to keep up with the desperate fox. Every few steps, Rust turned back to ensure she was following. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small clearing where the snow had been disturbed. There, half buried in the frost, lay Ember. The vixen's body was curled protectively around her swollen belly, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Around her neck, a rusted metal snare had tightened cruelly, its jagged edges biting deep into her fur. Blood stained the snow beneath her. Margaret dropped to her knees, horror flooding her veins. Ember let out a weak, pitiful whimper. Rust paced anxiously, his cries sharp against the wind. Margaret's stiff fingers fumbled with the cruel metal, but the snare was frozen and unyielding. With trembling determination, she pulled with all her strength. Finally, the snare gave way, releasing Ember from its grip. But there was no time to rest. Ember's body shuddered violently, her muscles contracting. Margaret realized with a shock she was going into labor. Panic surged through her. She couldn't leave Ember here, not in this cold, not in this storm. Summoning all her strength, she lifted the injured fox into her arms and began the slow, painful trek through the snow. Rust followed closely, his sharp whines urging her forward. Margaret's legs burned with exertion, her breath coming in harsh gasps, but she refused to stop. After what felt like an eternity, she spotted the dark silhouette of an old hunting shack William had built years ago. She kicked the door open and stumbled inside, her body aching with exhaustion. The interior was freezing, but at least it provided shelter from the relentless wind. Working quickly, Margaret laid Ember on a blanket near the fireplace and struck a match to light the dry wood William had stored. The fire flickered to life, casting a golden glow across the small space. Ember trembled, letting out small, painful cries. Margaret knelt beside her, whispering soothing words as she gently rubbed the vixen's belly, encouraging her through each contraction. Rust stood nearby, his golden eyes filled with concern. Then, at last, the first tiny fox pup entered the world, a fragile, trembling creature barely larger than Margaret's palm. She quickly wiped it clean and placed it close to Ember's warm fur. Another followed, then another. 3 small lives, barely clinging to warmth, nestled into their mother's belly. Ember, though exhausted, instinctively licked each of them, her maternal instincts overtaking her pain. Rust, stepping forward cautiously, sniffed each newborn, his tail flicking with tentative joy. Margaret leaned back, her body drained but her heart swelling with relief. In this frozen wilderness, against all odds, she had helped bring new life into the world. As the fire crackled and the warmth spread through the shack, a deep sense of peace settled over them. Hours later, when the storm had finally begun to subside, Margaret forced herself to return to the cabin. The journey was slow, her body sore, but her heart was light. When she stepped inside, William was there, worry etched across his face. Before he could speak, she told him everything: the storm, the snare, the birth. He listened intently, his rough hands holding hers tightly, awe shining in his tired eyes. The next morning, as the sky cleared, William and Margaret gathered fresh meat, warm water, and medical supplies before setting off for the shack. Russ was waiting outside when they arrived, his tail swishing in excitement. Inside, Ember lay curled around her pups, exhaustion still evident in her features, but her eyes shone with quiet contentment. William approached gently, his touch as light as the falling snow, removing the old bandages from Ember's wounds and replacing them with fresh ones, meticulously cleaning and dressing the injuries. He worked with a quiet reverence, aware of the delicate balance he was maintaining, respecting the wild spirit even as he offered aid. Margaret set down a bowl of warm water, the steam rising like a gentle blessing, and a tray of finely chopped meat, the scent of sustenance filling the air. Rust sniffed the offering, his keen senses assessing the gift, before pressing his nose against Margaret's hand in gratitude, a gesture that spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. The act was a testament to the deepening trust, a bridge built between their disparate worlds. In the weeks that followed, the couple returned daily, their presence a constant reassurance in the harsh wilderness. They navigated the familiar paths, their footsteps a rhythmic echo in the stillness, ensuring Ember and her pups were well fed and safe. They observed the subtle changes, the gradual healing, the blossoming of new life. Slowly, Ember's strength returned, her movements regaining their fluid grace, her eyes reflecting a quiet contentment. The pups grew stronger, their tiny bodies filling out with the sustenance they received, their playful antics a vibrant counterpoint to the silent landscape. They chased each other around the shack, their tiny barks a joyful symphony, a testament to their resilience. What had once been a desolate and unforgiving land, a realm of stark beauty and relentless challenges, now held something remarkable, a bond forged in the heart of a storm, an unbreakable connection between human and wild. The shack, once a simple shelter, had become a sanctuary, a place of healing and renewal. The clearing, where Ember had been ensnared, was now a place of reunion, a symbol of hope. The snow-covered paths, once a source of hardship, were now a testament to their shared journey, a trail of compassion. And as Margaret watched Rust and Ember nestled together with their young, a picture of familial warmth against the backdrop of the frozen wilderness, she knew that their world had changed forever in the most beautiful way possible. They had not merely saved lives. They had woven themselves into the fabric of the wild, becoming a part of its story, its resilience, its enduring beauty. And so, in the heart of the Yukon's wild expanse, a bond was forged through compassion and courage. This story reminds us that even in the harshest environments, kindness can bloom, and that the connections we make with the natural world are truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed this tale of resilience and connection, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories from the wild. Thank you for watching.